All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Hertz, Tribeca Trade Group. And wow, what a day for the overall market. And SPYs finished up 1.1%. Qs, again with the outperformance, finished up 1.3%. And IWM, a little bit of underperformance there, but small caps still finished up about 65 basis points, which is not too shabby. Emerging markets finished up close to 1%. The transports, which really had a lot of strength to them, outperformed. They were up 1.8%. I'll get to the transports in a second. Bonds were essentially flat on the day, so that volatility that we saw last week in the bonds just really hasn't been there the last couple days, and good to see that kind of out of the picture for the day. And again, a lot of these exogenous type events or areas of the market. Good to see that the volatility fall down there in the bonds and really not affecting the equities the last couple days. So really nice. So we have just looking at the S&P chart, S&P futures chart, we're now into value. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. Of course, this is a closing bar now, but first day that we're back inside the value area for S&P. And continuation from Friday. And I think a lot of people kind of started to feel like the worst was past. You know, we had this back and forth. I call it a little bit of shake and bake last week. But, you know, hindsight, of course, 2020. But it does feel like, you know, clearly we had a nice move. I mean, this is a pretty perfect scenario from where we touched the 200-day moving average a couple weeks ago, rallied back. You know, had a week of just consolidation. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4 inside days. I would say from this bar or close to it. And then Friday we edged higher, closed right around the highs of the day, and then some continuation today. Again, it kind of felt like that. A lot of the charts seem to be setting up pretty nicely for that next move after Friday. I'll go over to the Qs or NQ, and that's really where the strength has been. You know, I talked about this in the weekend video that I think was a pretty good signal to see money kind of rush back into higher growth areas of the market. As I talked about in the weekend video, if we would have seen, you know, a lot of defensive areas and lower volatility equity names, you know, if we would have saw all the money kind of rush back into there and the momentum go into those defensive areas of the market, then I would have said, hey, that's not such a great idea. But you know, to see the Nasdaq and higher beta names lead us higher all the way since the couple weeks ago correction, I think was a great signal in multiple areas inside of technology as well as just momentum names. So really nice performance. We're almost right back to the highs, by the way, in the Qs. It's pretty remarkable, right? That it happened that quickly. You know, I got long. I did not get long the Qs, but I got long Look at FDN, which is at a 52-week high. I got long FDN. Here, I'll show you the exact day, which I don't mind showing, but this is my this is the cash trend portfolio. I got long FDN on the 12th of February, which was, I think, one day back here. Yeah, back here. I think on the reclaim of one of the moving averages. But yeah, 52-week high. So here's a good example. You know, these things don't normally bounce back first if you know that there's not an appetite for risk. So, you know, what's in this ETF, by the way, it's your FANG stocks are your biggest weight. So I know Apple's not a FANG stock, but Apple's basically had a lot of call buying today. A couple different expirations, but going all the way out to January, saw some call buying, so very close to 52-week high, returning back to the scene of the crime from when it reported earnings. The other FANG stocks, I'm not going to spend too much time on the FANG stocks because I want to talk about some of the other areas that participated. But these names got a boost right around the open. Facebook and Netflix were two of the FANG stocks that I was watching for today. I mean, look at the candle on Netflix today, breaking out. I thought this looked similar to the setup for Boeing. Not exactly, but kind of hit that got to the 52-week high and paused. And then Boeing took that next leg higher today, so 52-week high across the board there. Amazon, which Amazon I think still moving quite nicely, but Amazon was one of the first ones to really start to leg higher. After that, in this case, it was just the 50-day moving. I know I'm rehashing kind of the past here, but once this touched the 52-week high, it was 52-week high, the 50-day moving average, it rebounded quite nicely and went from 1350 to now 1520. So again, pretty remarkable where the strength, how quickly the move has been in some of the names that have really had the strength. So today, I'll talk about the semiconductors first. Micron, I think on anybody who watches option activity, has been noticing, I think, the strength in Micron, and when they came into Micron, which was when the day when the S&P touched the 200-day moving average. So I've been in Micron. I added to my position here. I did kind of force a target today in Micron. I just feel a little bit more. It's an option position, so I feel a little bit more comfortable taking a target, and then letting the rest run. And certainly a very good side. And it's tough to force a target because they just continue to buy more calls in Micron, and it's been that way just about almost every day in the last 2 weeks, right? So again, like I said, if you're following option activity, this was just a great signal, and over and over and over. Weeklies, and that's the thing with these Micron calls. It's been not just one expiration, it's been multiple expirations. These were the January 60s, January 65 calls, April calls as well. So, really kind of helps you stay in a trade too, to see that continuous call buying. And then it's, Micron, I would say, is the top of the list in terms of the semiconductor call buying, but it's also been Intel. Intel several times. And, fortunately, I did get long Intel and made it into a profitable trade, but I'm not still in it. And look at this thing go. We featured this. We talked about this in this weekend's video, how I thought this was still a good play. But I do not have a position in this one, so shame on me for not doing it. But definitely recognize the setup and the call buying all along the way here in Intel. So really nice. Then a couple of smaller names today. AMD saw aggressive call buying today. Really hasn't seen that much call buying the last few weeks, but they came in today, finished up 2.9%. Another small cap name, MSCC, today. Really small trade, but aggressive. And sometimes for the smaller cap names, you don't need a huge block trade to go up. Sometimes just a nice small aggressive trade, and then it catches. So this is MSCC. This has been a nice name off of previously off of call activity, and you could see, small. This is just a $43,000 trade that was swept, March 65 calls, but this thing took off like a rocket. There's a few other semiconductor names, but I could spend 15-20 minutes just talking about them all. The whole SMH ETF finished up 2%. Qualcomm was another name that saw call activity today. Going back and forth with NXPI, and then actually naming a price, I think, today that they thought would be acceptable for Broadcom. So pretty interesting. Skyworks has been another name. Like I said, I'll get away from the semi names, I promise. But these names have just been out of control. Skyworks, I think, is your best performer in the Qs month to date, so in February, and notice it took that VPOC out. What a great day to take call buying. We talked about Skyworks. Skyworks saw some really nice call buying last week. All right, so I'll move on from this group. What else? The airlines. Holy cow, the airlines. Buffett made some comments, and sometimes that's all it takes for a catalyst. With Buffett making comments about the airlines and that he likes the airlines, took the whole group up 2.6%. We did see a little bit of call buying in Southwest this morning, but really the name that's been seeing all the call buying is American Airlines, and this gapped up and went today. Again, the gap up because of Buffett's comments this morning, but it's been, I've been tying out the open interest the last week in American Airlines, and they've continued to buy American Airlines. There's been some flow in some other airlines, but by far and away, This one has seen the most. I think it's the May 55 calls, which is exactly where it closed today, which the open interest, and I even tweeted that out this morning, that the open interest increased again in that line. And there was more calls on that line again today. So that was another name. Just the overall. I know I've been talking about some of the individual names, but you could see, it spilled over to 2 pages. Whenever that happens, you know that the option activity on the call side is running very, very hot. The activity definitely picked up on Friday, and I think just follow through and even more activity, I think, today in terms of number of tickets. So another group that saw some activity, and this is a group that really hasn't, could be the next runner, I would think, or has a chance, is healthcare. Look at the move in healthcare. They bought some calls both in March and April today in the healthcare ETF. I love this trade, so I did put this trade on. It's kind of funny because you have to laugh at these kind of things, but I kind of learned from last week a little bit, and because I put on some trades in the middle of the day last week, which really did not work well because the middle of a couple of days last week, the middle of the day, we that's where we started to sell off. So I really like this XLV trade. I wanted to see us close into value, so I did wait till the end of the day to put the trade on. So I waited for a little bit of confirmation, which kind of stinks when I think this was up about 60, 70 basis points and closed up 1.3%. So it would have ended up being a nice trade to start. But I think a few different members in the Tribeca trade group today went ahead and they did not wait for me. They went ahead and put the trade on. I went out in June. Like I said, there was March and April calls. But you start to look, and obviously if this is the whole group, if the whole group had a really nice day, then there's going to be some individual names that are starting to look pretty good. I would go to Gilead. This one, I would say, I did not put the trade on today. There was just too many things, too much momentum to the upside, and it's tough to really kind of chase at this point, where there's certainly been names that we've been adding to the last couple weeks, but I figured I'll wait a little bit longer. It hasn't had an MACD crossover, so I just didn't want to add a bunch of names into strength, but Gilead is pretty high on my list. I like that it bounced. It did not really break the 50-day moving average. And look at the volume today in the Gilead. Again, just March calls, short-dated calls. So I don't know the reason why they're buying these. I don't know. Maybe there's a conference going on. But March 81 calls, and notice that there was no really big print there. They were just accumulating them throughout the day, and you could see there was also some January 80 calls that went up. But regardless, a lot of times I'm never going to know, or very rare to know what their motivation was for buying the calls. For me, it just looks pretty good. It looks like it's trying to break this little pattern here, and again, an MACD crossover would be welcomed here for some confirmation purposes. But I like this. And again, you have to zoom out in some of these charts, and you could see that it's been making progress over the last year. A little bit of back and forth, but I'm willing to give this another shot here, noticing that it's not extended. So that's the thing, is that most of what's been participating and leading the way is technology. Certainly there's been a lot of money that's been put to work in technology. Healthcare is not one of them in terms of ETF fund flows, which is something that I track on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. And there's been a lot of money that's been taken out of healthcare. So this is not an overcrowded space at all. So I like this. There was also some Biogen calls that were bought. And there was another name. So this, it did kind of perk up in terms of names that we saw the activity in. This was ARWR, which is another name. So I like to see when we see call buying in several different names within the group. I think it gives it really good breadth, and especially when I'm going as I went into the healthcare ETF, which again, I like that trade. The implied volatility is really low in XLV options, so I think a great looking trade. Disney, this is another name that we've seen call buying in a few times now. So nice looking call buyer again in this name, doing well. I think the the one movie that they have, what's it called? The was it the Panther movie, which I have not seen yet. Want to see it. That's been doing really well at the movies. So I think that's been helping the stock a little bit. But nevertheless, the call buying all along has provided a really good signal. PayPal. This was a trade that I decided to take today. It did close inside value. You know, kind of an underperformer for the day, down 40 basis points. Maybe gets the catalyst might be for the call buying, might be because Square is reporting tomorrow. Not 100% sure on that, but we've seen call buying now 3 days in a row in PayPal. Baba came in with a really nice call buyer towards the end of the day. Baba was a little bit of an underperformer through the morning, but finished positive for the day, right at the top of value. I think the chart looks fine as long as it gets over that hump of the top of value. But you know, we're only going to have this value area for a couple more days. This is for February, but I would say as long as this is a developing value area for March. But I would say as long as we finish above 193 would be positive for BABA. Twitter was another name, so I could go on and on here, guys, with the call activity. But a lot of tech. Also was, Autodesk, which reports, I believe, in a week or two. Saw a nice chunky call buyer in this one for March. There was some ETF, country-specific ETF buying. Mexico saw some calls. ASHR, which is the China Shanghai ETF. CHAU, which is also another China name, saw some call buying. A lot of weekly call buying in the broker-dealers, ETFC, as well as Schwab saw weekly call buyers. Johnson & Johnson is another healthcare name that saw some call buying in the beginning of the day. Going back to semis, sorry, the beginning of the day feels like a long time ago, but Applied Materials saw more call buying as well. So it goes on and on, guys. Just a really nice day, and clearly there was a lot of risk-taking going on the option side. So thanks for watching. A couple other trades, didn't mention these, but some of the trades in our cash trend portfolio doing really, really well. Look at PBR, for example, breaking out here. So again, it's not just tech has by far been the leader, but there's been definitely some different pockets of strength. So PBR making a nice move today as well. Which I'm sorry, did I mention this, or maybe I did mention this one in the video. Been a long day. Thanks for watching the video, and have a great evening.